Southern Nevada is full of variety. From the Las Vegas Strip to the mountains to the desert floor, there is something for everyone. At close to 8,000 square miles, Clark County is larger than the state of New Jersey, and 86% of that area is federal land. Las Vegas sits in the heart of Clark County. The city and surrounding communities are home to a diverse population of over 2 million residents, while the Las Vegas resorts welcome approximately 36 million visitors annually. This unique intersection of outdoor recreation and an international tourist hub provides the perfect backdrop for a collaborative operation of federal land professionals. In the 1990s, as the valley's population boomed and land on which to build became scarce, this growth of more than 7,000 persons per month necessitated more space for the increasing population. The Southern Nevada Public Land Management Act was passed by Congress and signed into law in October of 1998. This act allowed land sale proceeds to be utilized to protect the fragile Mojave Desert ecosystem and support the inflow of increased tourism. A 2002 amendment to the act allowed revenues to be used for federal agency activities which promote conservation on federal lands, including law enforcement. The Southern Nevada Agency Partnership. The U.S. Forest Service within the Department of Agriculture and the Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the National Park Service within the Department of the Interior work with one another to coordinate the enforcement, protection, conservation, and use of federal lands in southern Nevada as an extension of one ecosystem. Lake Mead National Recreation Area is located east of Las Vegas and is operated by the National Park Service. It sees approximately 6.3 million visitors annually. The Spring Mountains, or Mount Charleston, is northwest of the valley. Each year it welcomes 2 million visitors and is managed by the U.S. Forest Service. To the northeast is the Desert National Wildlife Refuge Complex, maintained by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Annually, about 10,000 people seek out its quiet solitude. The Bureau of Land Management manages the Red Rock National Conservation Area and many other parcels of land across southern Nevada. About 1 million people enjoy recreational opportunities on these lands each year.
The Las Vegas Valley is unique in that it's surrounded by all 4 land management agencies. The vision of the federal managers of each of the agencies was to create a comprehensive professional law enforcement group that could be shared by each of the agencies. They would have the knowledge and the skills to be able to conduct activities on each other's lands. The law enforcement team is a strong example of this interagency cooperation, and it's a great example of shared responsibilities in educating the public, in conducting law enforcement operations, and creating stewardship for public lands from future generations.
It's a great model, and I think it should be a model for the rest of the U.S. There are no lines. Even though this piece of land may be Forest Service, then, it's property boundary that says it's BLM. Well, by us being SNAP officers, we're able to cross those lines and get the job done.
Prior to implement funding, the Desert National Wildlife Refuge Complex had no full-time law enforcement, and in the 69 or so year history of the Desert National Wildlife Refuge, they never had a full-time officer. So people were going out and recreating out there without necessarily knowing what was appropriate and not on the refuge. And there were things going on in that refuge for many, many years that the agency didn't know about. We saturated the area with officers from time to time to contact as many folks out there as possible, getting the word out to the area what appropriate uses of that area along the refuge and the BLM lands were. Became rather successful, saw a decrease in the violations going on there. With the now statewide Memorandum of Understanding, refuge managers have a pool of interagency officers to call upon when there isn't a refuge law enforcement officer available. For instance, when we're all gone to our 40-hour refresher training, they know that they can call a forest officer or BLM officer and they're nearby and will be able to come and know how to handle the situation.
During busy holiday weekends or summer events, we rely heavily on BLM, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Forest Service, which is our partners with the SNAP agency. These agencies increase our visibility and service and safety to the visitors within the park. By using these local resource agencies, they're resource-minded, they save us expense, and it's easier for us than bringing in outside agencies who aren't experienced with the local area.
we wear a different uniform, but our mission is still the same, and we're there to protect the public, to protect the resources.
Working with some of the other agencies, BLM, Park Service, Fish and Wildlife, Metro, and some of these other agencies, we bring together all different resources to get the job done.
I'm a one-man law enforcement ranger here in the area, and with the SNAP program, they can assist me with more law enforcement during a busy weekend or like in activities like ARPA theft, and they can do surveillance or assist me in other areas.
Doing the operations together on a busy 4th of July weekend out here on the lake, having the ability to bring in Forest Service officers, Bureau of Land Management officers, and Fish and Wildlife officers who regularly come back. They know the area. Some of them have already worked for the Park Service before transferring or have worked for other land management agencies. So there's just a general knowledge of how we operate here at Lake Mead. And then when they come here on those busy weekends, they can just hit the ground running.
To coordinate these activities and to direct emergency calls, a new interagency communication center was built in Boulder City.
So in 2012, the Southern Nevada Agency Partnership was able to secure funding for the Southern Nevada Public Lands Management Act for the purchase and the building construction of a new interagency communication center. And that's a 24-hour, 7 days a week public safety dispatching center. We're a primary answering point and secondary answering point for a 911 service within the lands management areas. We provide radio communications and infrastructure, CAD support, which is a computer-aided dispatching support. We provide satellite GPS tracking, mobile data terminal service. Really, the agencies are operating on very narrow margins for error within their budgets, and so they may only have 1 or 2 resources anymore. So it's really a matter of being able to communicate with each other and then share resources when an incident comes up. And so that's something this center does, is everybody can hear each other. We can have one sort of dispatcher directing resources to all the agencies, and they can also come into the center and set up an incident command post within our emergency operations center and run an incident from here with access to mapping and camera systems out in the field and CAD data from the dispatchers, radios. They can all do that from right in here and sit across the table with interagency partners.
As an interagency dispatcher, we have personal contacts with all the other agencies, including U.S. Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Forestry, Bureau of Land Management, National Park Service. The benefit of knowing these officers on a more personal level is knowing their capabilities in all these different federal areas. When we dispatch the officers, we know their capabilities beforehand.
All of us now have become familiar with each other's lands. We know where to respond to if an officer is out in the middle of, for example, Lovell Canyon. These officers now know where that is because we've developed such a partnership over the years that everyone is familiar now with everyone's patrol areas, even down to the areas that don't have names. Officers now know where those are and they're able to respond to help out whatever officer may be calling for assistance. It's amazing how people are able to respond and be dispatched to each other's lands without worrying about boundary. And if it turns into a big case where there has to be follow-up investigation, it's assigned to a special agent, and that special agent is able to then to continue it on.
If I'm on a long traffic stop and dispatch can't get to me, I'm dealing with multiple subjects, they're sending a BLM or Fish and Wildlife officer my way quickly. It's like having backup right around the corner.
We even support the local police departments. Just recently we had an elderly man who suffered from Alzheimer's, had been sick, and he was confused and left his home at night when the temperature was about 35 degrees, and he had been missing for over 2 hours and he wasn't dressed for the weather. So we used Onyx. Even though he's a police dog, we used him in this critical instance for a search and rescue. We were able to pick up a scent trail away from the victim's house here in Boulder City, and we tracked him for about a half mile. And Onyx found the gentleman. He was unconscious in a drainage ditch. We were able to find the gentleman, get him immediate medical attention, and ultimately he survived.
Occasionally we get together as a group to enforce laws in specific problem areas on each other's lands.
The area that we're here today is known as Placer Cove. It's in the El Dorado Canyon. This area is commonly known by the locals as also just the cliffs, or the cliffs at Nelson. It's a remote area, about 45 minutes away from Las Vegas. A lot of people come here in the summertime to swim, and I don't know if you can see in the view here, there's some cliffs that attract people so far as cliff jumping as well. In the past, we've had trouble with fights and gang activity. The interagency rangers, we've done several saturation patrols here within the last 5 or 6 years, in which we've been, zero tolerance so far as alcohol, speeding, any activities such as littering and that sort of thing. And that's been very helpful as far as reducing the amount of criminal activity we find here and making this more of a family-oriented place and a place where people feel safe to bring their families.
One of the great things about the SNAP law enforcement team is we've accomplished a lot with other specialists in the protection of resources. We get to work with restoration folks, we get to work with wilderness protection folks, and we get to work with anti-litter groups, as well as the public. One good example of this cooperation was between the restoration team and the law enforcement team, as well as the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, to remove graffiti from Placer Cove area at Lake Mead.
We recognize that the alcohol use by the driving public is a significant contributing factor to accidents both on and off the water. By conducting these checkpoints, we promote awareness to the general public to be responsible both on and off the water.
We've been very vigorous and very vigilant in prosecuting DUIs. And in the few years that I've been in this office, I've seen a marked decline in the number of DUI cases that we're having to arrest out at these public lands. So I see success in that, in ensuring the safety of these areas when people go out with their families to enjoy them.
Our most successful efforts have been in the Sunrise management area. That area was getting hit very, very hard with dumpers. There were some fires in the area, and we had all kinds of other things going on, prostitution, drug use. And over the course of 5 years, between the interagency patrols and some fencing put in some strategic areas, we've managed to cut that down to almost zero.
And now, when you think of Sunrise Mountain area, you don't think of all the bad things that happen. You think of the ways that we've all come together as a Southern Nevada agency partnership.
In addition to patrol officers, a cadre of special agents jointly investigates and assists one another with complex investigations occurring across jurisdictions. A dedicated special assistant to the U.S. Attorney, specializing and focusing on land management case prosecution, completes the SNAP law enforcement team.
We have an experienced prosecutor as a go-to team member who is dedicated to just handling land management cases and land management issues. And when you have someone in that position and you can dedicate that kind of resource to solely work in a singular area, that person develops a high level of expertise, is able to coordinate with the various law enforcement agencies that are part of SNAP, and we're able to do more cases. We're able to do them more effectively.
So my role here in this office is to handle whatever prosecution arises on any of the public lands, and Nevada is basically 80 to 90% federal public lands, so it's whatever happens there, I deal with it here.
We're very fortunate that the Southern Nevada Public Lands Management Act allowed for funding, but based upon that grant and that type of funding and allowing us to have that SASA position, we are able to fully protect the federal lands and prosecute those cases that we should be prosecuting, for the betterment of those federal lands.
While enforcement and prosecution remains a large percentage of the work the SNAP officers perform, they are also working hard to protect the land and educate the public.
Education is a cornerstone of law enforcement contacts with the public. Las Vegas has 16 new wilderness areas for the public to enjoy. And while we're out there conducting our contacts with the visitors on a daily basis, we make sure that we promote those wilderness areas. And our goal is to create stewards for the future. One other exceptional program that the law enforcement team has been involved with the education team is a program called Camping 101, which is conducted at local high schools. We've been doing this for 7 or 8 years now, and it's been a huge success with the school programs.
There's so many kids right here in Las Vegas that had never used their public land, you know, and we try to point out, hey, there's Red Rock, hey, there's Mount Charleston, or that's the sheep range over there, and teach them how to camp and how to do it correctly, what they need to take, and how, you know, just how to take care of the land and be stewards of the land.
Well, the Camping 101 and other outdoor education events, job fairs, speaking with UNLV students, career days, and science festivals have given officers, the land management officers in SNAP, an opportunity to become role models to the kids of Las Vegas who otherwise may not have experienced the outdoors.
Because a lot of students come from the city or their parents don't take them hiking or camping, but then once they start to learn how easy it is, I hear students say, oh, I want to do this and I want to actually take my family out. And that's the cool part, is that we hopefully see this, that they actually take these lessons and take them out onto the public lands.
You can't really go out hiking if you don't know what to do or bring. This program helps you with that. You learn how to work a compass, how to set up tents, how to navigate, what to pack, what to look out for, things like that.
They get to speak with, you know, the rangers out here and understand they're just people. They want you to make sure that you're safe and doing all the right things on all those public lands, and they're just great for the whole program. Students can put, you know, a face with, it's not a police officer, it's a forest ranger, and they have a lot of good information on where to camp, where to find wildlife, and the local regulations, so it's a very good thing for everyone.
During the 9 years that we've been together as a law enforcement group, working interagency, we have been recognized with several prestigious awards. One of those in 2007 was the BLM Law Enforcement Group of the Year. Another award that we won in 2007 was the National Service First group, and that was for our efficiency and cooperation in achieving efficiency in government services. In 2012, we were recognized on a national level for the Department of the Interior Award for Partners in Conservation. The Partners in Conservation Award, which we received in 2012, was the first time a law enforcement group was given such an award. Through the Service First legislation that allows for efficiency of government operations and the Southern Nevada Public Lands Management Act, the public is greatly benefiting from the presence of law enforcement out there to protect them and to protect the resources that they love so much.
The Southern Nevada Agency Partnership effectively coordinates resources for producing public value, service, and government efficiency. Through the Service First legislation, which permits the 4 agencies to share resources, and continued funding, SNAP can remain a role model of cooperation and efficiency.